My name's Steve and I love people who make things. We're a nation of inventive, inspiring makers.
This room alone will produce 100,000 items a year. But yeah, it used to be full of cows.
And then I'd be, Afghanistan or Iraq, sat in my room just sketching out designs, waiting to come home to play around with them.
I'm on a mission to list the greatest products we make, because if we don't champion the skills on our doorstep, we risk losing them.
And running down to our left, we have hand cutting. The problem is getting labour now.
One of the biggest challenges we have here is our ageing workforce.
Join me as we hear stories from behind the factory doors.
I remember drawing my dad's house and he said, "Why don't you count the bricks?"
Oh, he wanted you to be quiet, didn't he? Do you ever have any sleepless nights, Alex?
I don't sleep.
Together, let's make more makers. Welcome to the factory next door and welcome to the village of Appledore in Kent. We're just a few miles away from the English Channel here. A quick shout out to those of you listening whilst you're prepping your Christmas dinners. I hope everything's going according to plan. Please don't forget the Yorkshire puddings. Okay, so we're stood looking out over some very gentle rolling hills. Beautiful scene, even as the rain starts to fall and the wind picks up. Today you and I are off to learn about an industry that's got a long history in mainland Europe, but is a relatively new arrival to these shores. Number 26 on our list of the greatest products we make here is the sparkling wine by Gusbourne. Here's what's coming up in this week's show.
Some of those guys are coming from France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand. They're coming to the UK to see what we're doing, how we're doing it and what we're offering.
As the wind picks up and the rain lashes down, these seasonal workers seem to be getting further and further away from us.
I was working at a desk in an office 5 days a week, but coming out here doing this, it's just, wonderful.
Was this always planned?
I think if you talk to Andrew Weber, who's the founder of the company, he would say, yes, this was always planned.
Something nice about touching a barrel, isn't there?
Yeah, it's nice to you can come and give them a cuddle sometimes. Yeah.
Jon Pollard, head vineyard manager.
Okay, John, now we've just jumped into your 4x4 and you're going to give us a tour, but I was promised a dog in the car.
Oh, there's a dog in the car, but he's in the back of the car. He's not in the back seat.
He's very quiet.
Yeah, he is. He's a quiet dog. He's a Labrador, isn't he? He's pretty chilled out most of the time.
Right, okay, where are we going to head, John?
We've got some seasonal workers in, just starting pruning, doing a bit of work out here today, so we can go and have a look at those guys, and then we'll maybe have a bit of a tour around, get a bit of elevation. We can talk about the landscape that we're farming in, essentially, which will maybe just paint a bit of a picture.
How big is the site?
So the site here with actual planted vineyards is, on this site in Kent, is 61 hectares. We've got another 32 hectares of vineyards over in West Sussex near Chichester. So we're a split site, pretty decent size, not the biggest. There's some other very big vineyards in the UK. So we'd probably be in easily the top quarter from a size point of view, I would have thought. And here we have our pruning crew, who some of them have just joined us this year. So these are all local guys, all from the sort of local neighbourhood, if you like. And we've got, I think, what have we got here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 11 people in today. Sometimes we'll have about 18. So these are guys who in the past have joined our harvesting team to help us bring the fruit in at harvest. We've then been able to recruit from the harvest team the people who we think are interested in the seasonal work.
When you talked about seasonal workers, I just naturally assume seasonal workers are kind of in the summer, but obviously not. Have you got seasonal workers? They're not seasonal. Aren't they just workers?
We still regard them as seasonal workers because they don't work the full year. There's certain breaks during the year, so they're here for pruning till the end of March. They'll take a break from through April until mid-May, and then they'll be through with us until the end of August. Short break, harvest from mid to the end of September. Little break after harvest, then back into pruning.
Can we chat to one of them?
Yeah.
Do you think any of them would chat to us?
I think they will.
I see hundreds and hundreds of vines here.
Yeah.
Did you say every single one is pruned. Oh, hello. What's the pooch called?
Angus.
Hello, Angus, mate. He looks a happy pooch. So, sorry, so there's hundreds and hundreds of these plants, these vines. Did you say you're pruning every single one by hand?
Every single one by hand, yeah. Because the way we do it by hand, you get the accuracy of what you're wanting to do. So when we're pruning, we're not just pruning to leave buds for next year's harvest. We're pruning to maintain the architecture of that vine for future years.
How old are these vines?
These vines here were planted in 2015, and the first vines on Gusbourne were planted in 2004. We may be having a bit of trouble keeping the wind off the mic.
It's getting quite windy there. You're the vineyard manager for a internationally renowned, award-winning English wine producer. Was this always planned?
I think if you talk to Andrew Weber, who's the founder of the company, he would say yes, this was always planned. I came in as employee number 1 back in 2004, so I've been here. This is my 20th year, 21st year even, and I came to it very much with just an interest in getting involved in wine, and particularly with growing vines and the viticulture side of things. So I think when I came in and got to know Andrew, I knew that the business was going somewhere, but I think it's very difficult to predict where it's going to be 20 years from that point.
Now, I don't want to sound too flippant, but in 2004 then, when Andrew kind of, pointed at the ground and said, "Here we go.
Yeah, here's a vineyard.
Plant a vineyard. We're going to make sparkling wines." Were you thinking, I'm not so sure, might take a little while, or were you, kind of super excited, or kind of was there skepticism behind your smiles?
Yeah, this is, it's 20 years ago now. There was no skepticism at all. There might have been skepticism from other people that I knew, and possibly even from some members of Andrew's family. There might have been skepticism. Why in the south of England? Why not the south of France? That style of questioning, possibly. So there was no skepticism, and I think I was always confident because there was good examples in Chapel Down, Ridgeview, Nye Timber. They were all established brands and businesses doing well and showing what could be done. We've had a fair bit of rain last night, and obviously this is a clay soil, a Wealden clay. It's quite thick, quite a heavy clay soil.
I was just about to jump in there and say, kind of, when I think of soil, obviously I think of my local park, and it's very dark brown, very dark brown. And actually, just looking down here with my eye, my uneducated eye, it's almost beige. It's almost beige.
Yeah, it is. It's a clay soil. This is Wealden clay, stick to your boots clay, and from as a growing medium for the vines here in Sussex, in Kent, it's a completely different soil here than in Sussex. In Sussex, we've got more of what you'd maybe refer to as your traditional champenoise type soils. A flinty clay loam over chalk. This is clay that probably runs far deeper than the vine roots can access any further. This soil holds onto the water very well, as you can see at the moment. All the fields have full drainage in, so we want to get rid of that water come the springtime as quickly as possible, and that allows the soils to heat up and then the vines to start getting active as well. So it comes with its challenges, but also it is beneficial from that water holding capacity. And we saw that in 2020, 2022, and we had these really long summers of drought with no rain, and the vines are still going strong, still growing very healthily.
As the wind picks up and the rain lashes down, these seasonal workers seem to be getting further and further away from us.
Well, they're moving quite quickly. They're not pruning today, and we try our best not to prune in the rain, because the problem with pruning in the rain is you can get more transfer of fungal pathogens on the blades of the secataire, moving them from one vine to the other. Hello, Lindsay.
Hey, Lindsay, how you doing?
A little bit wet, but I'm fine.
I got to say, I would imagine normally it's quite beautiful up here, but it's not the ideal day, is it?
Not really, no.
Tell me what you're doing, Lindsay.
We're trimming the vine back for next year's growth. So on this row we're taking it back to 7 buds.
I'm slightly embarrassed to ask this question on a very rainy, windy day, but what do you love about this? Why do you choose to do this?
Very grounding. I was working at a desk in an office 5 days a week, but coming out here doing this, it's just, wonderful.
What's the moments where you're like, and again, I realise the rain is coming down right now, Lindsay, but what are the moments where you're like, this is where I'm happiest?
The fact that I want to get up in the morning.
I mean, that's pretty epic.
Sunny day. Harvest is amazing. Hard work, but amazing.
I guess there must be something very satisfying about holding that bottle at the end of the summer.
Just the one. Be more than one.
and very well deserved as well. Lindsay, thank you so much for chatting to me.
Thank you.
The boom is amazing in terms of the growth.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at UK government figures, so hectares under vine in the UK quadrupled since 2000.
Yeah, I think there's over 4,000 hectares now, isn't there?
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 1,000 vineyards.
Yeah, there's vines going in every year that we've been in business. There's been a lot of vines going in, and we obviously, when we're planting vineyards, we're working with contractors help us get them in the ground as well. And we know those contractors quite well, and they might be planting 500,000 to 1.5 million vines every year. So there's a huge appetite in the UK for more vineyards to go in the ground, and I think
why is that? It's an old industry that is kind of now seemingly booming in modern Britain, and lots of the industries that we chat to on the show, they've got a long history here, and we talk about the importance of preserving skills and things like that. Here, you're kind of like you're bringing people in to teach them new skills.
Well, exactly, yeah, and I think there is, we were talking about labour earlier on today, making sure that we've got enough labour, and that is starting to sort of fulfil the criteria, if you see what I mean. Enough people from the local population that are interested in the skill set as well. We have a number of interns, as we refer to them. They're sort of harvest workers that help in the winery, and some of those guys are skilled winery workers and have been doing it for many seasons. But some of those guys are coming from France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand. They're coming to the UK to see what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we're offering. We are in a changing climate, which is making this possible, and that's something that we shouldn't forget. And we shouldn't forget that, because that changing climate is bringing some benefits to us, but that changing climate is obviously having some negative effects around the world as well. But from our situation here at Gusbourne, we've seen our average harvest start date used to be 2nd or 3rd day of October. Now it's about the 18th, 19th of September. So we've seen that shift even in these 20 years that we've been going.
Oh, the rain was really coming down there. You say you've got sheep on the side?
Well, we have sheep grazing elsewhere on the estate, but they're not in the vineyards just yet. But they will be coming into the vineyards in December. To the end of December.
How do you use the sheep in the vineyards?
So the sheep will come in at the end of the growing season, and this year and last year it's usually around December time. So a local shepherd who we've known for years and worked with for years, he'll bring his sheep in and they'll graze the vineyard. It is nutrient input, so we're getting all the organic matter, all the dung out the back end of the sheep that's going into the vineyards. That helps us to reduce our fertiliser inputs next year. A lot of what we're doing here at Gusbourne is, we're really trying to look after the soil. We're trying to improve the soil.
Tell me about kind of the nutrients and the very strong sense I get of almost kind of regenerative farming.
Yeah, I think, well, you think about farming systems before the Second World War, it was all involved animals, it all involved a diversity of crops and rotations. And I suppose since, the advent of agrochemical fertilisers, farming systems have massively moved away from that. So I think from a regenerative point of view, it's nothing new, it's not really been done in great quantity, if you like, in the last 75, 80 years. So I think we're trying to get back to that We're trying to use growing systems to improve that soil health and that nutrient status. So use of legumes, use of cover crops with different rooting abilities. So some of those will go deeper than the vines, bring up micronutrients. When that plant dies, they'll be in the area where the vine can use those micronutrients. So it's all that sort of thinking around that diversity of plant species that we're trying to push forward here.
Okay. So what is this building called?
This is the winery. So
That's nice and straightforward.
simple, yeah,
I thought you were
simple-
going to give me
as
some
simple as
fancy
that.
name there.
Yeah, so we do, our production is actually split from the winery side of things. So this is our primary production, which is where the fruit comes in to be pressed and made into wine. So probably the best time now for me to go and find Mary and bring her out, and then she can start talking about it. I don't want to put my foot in it either.
No, I don't want you to put your foot in it, John. Hello, Mary. Mary, it's very, very nice to meet you.
Was it wet enough out there for you? So my name is Mary Bridges and I am the head winemaker at Gusbourne.
So we've come into the winery, which is kind of enormous.
Very quiet at the moment.
Why is it quiet at the moment?
I mean, harvest is always kind of the really busy time. But once harvest is over and the fruit stops coming in, it very quickly goes from everything to this, just quiet.
I describe it as relaxing. It's a relaxing workshop.
For me, actually, once the kind of bonkers nature of harvest finishes, it's really great to see it quieten down, take a bit of a step back, and then you can really start thinking, right, what do we have in the shed? And what do we need to do to get that wine from where it is today to bottle next year? So for us, it starts here. These 3 presses along here, we have an 8-ton and 2 4.5-ton presses that will be running up to 4 times each a day during harvest. And the 2 smaller presses are really great. I find them really useful because we like to keep the parcels as individual as possible for as long as possible. So there might be a section of Commander's Vineyard or a certain clone in Boot Hill that will want to press as a parcel, settle as a parcel, and then ferment as that.
Ooh, hang on. So let me get this straight. So actually, it's not just about taking the harvest from across the estate. Actually, you're interested in particular fields and particular parts.
We take all of it in, but we don't just start at one end of the field and one end of the estate and work through. We are doing lots of analysis that starts around the 1st of September, so really early on, while the grapes are still like really hard peas and really green. We start taking that analysis so we can build up a picture of which blocks are moving at which rate, where the sugar's building, where the acidity is dropping. And each year, the first block that we pick typically changes. The vines don't do the same thing in every block every year. So we're monitoring this really closely so that when it's time for us to make a start, we're picking parcels at optimum ripeness across the estate. And we press 3 different fractions of juice. So the first 51% of the juice that comes out of the grapes is our cuvée parcel. So really the high sugar, high acid, purest part of the juice, I suppose. And then we take 6% after that and separate that off. Slightly harder pressing, so more phenolics. The acid starts to drop off, and then we take another 10%, which is a harder pressing yet, and then keep that separate. So we have all these options when we're blending.
Oh wow! Okay, so you take the 51%, which is your base. That's the bones, and then you take a 6 and a 10%, and you will use elements of that to add.
It's kind of like seasoning. When you get to when you're blending, so in the new year, let me talk about blending, I suppose, first of all, is in the new year, we'll grade all the tanks, and we can have up to 200 individual parcels in tanks and in barrels. We grade them all, we think about which blends they might suit, and then we'll start pulling together miniature versions of these blends, tasting them. 1 or 2% here or there at the end of a blend just kind of lifts it. It really is like the salt and pepper at the end, you've made a beautiful blend, but you just want that final little.
Because I'm not very smart, I just assumed you got a load of grapes, you squeeze them, You left it a little bit, and we're like, there you go. There's a bottle of wine. But actually, it's like you're mixing different levels all the time.
All the time, and it's nice because you kind of get a picture of what you're looking at harvest with the juice coming out the presses, but it's not until you allow them to complete their fermentation, rest for a couple of months over the winter, and taste them with a fresh kind of mindset in February time, you just have this like, oh yeah, I forgot about that one actually, or that, that one took a bit more work and now it's in a really good place. They're like lots of little wine friends that you get to know, their personalities, and it's your job as a winemaker and a winemaking team to bring them together so that what you end up with is greater than the sum of its parts.
Dear Factory Next Door community, my name's Lou and my dad is Steve, host of this podcast. When he's not telling me bad jokes, he's recording this show. He's got no team behind him, no agency funding it. He pays for everything. If you can afford to, would you please buy him a coffee so he can keep this show on the road? Go to www.buymeacoffee.com/The Factory Next Door. I'll also put the web address in the About section of the show and on his Instagram page. Thank you for helping to keep my dad busy and out of my hair when I'm trying to play Minecraft. I'll let you return to the show now.
So Mary, where did you learn your winemaking skills?
Studied at Plumpton, but I grew up in Scotland, and when I left school I didn't really have a passion or nothing I wanted to go and do at uni really, but what I did love was working in hospitality. I had a part-time job, so when I left school I went full-time into that, and I just loved good food, good wine, talking to people, and that's what kind of got me interested in wine, but it was more from a hospitality point of view. So studied WSET when I was 18.
What's WSET?
Wine and Spirits Educational Trust. So they have various levels of wine education that they offer.
Okay, and so you were coming out from, I'd like to be able to talk to customers about their wines and things like that.
I wanted to just make sure that, and my dad, he was into wine from, my whole life. We would always have a nice bottle with Sunday lunch kind of thing. So wine was familiar to me, but I wanted to make sure that when I was communicating about it, that I was saying the right thing and understanding it correctly. And I loved that. I had the best time doing that course. And then in back end of 2016, I just started to get itchy feet to do something different again, and realised that you could study winemaking in the UK. So packed up my bags, moved down to Sussex, and didn't know a soul. It was a really daunting kind of, what am I doing? But, nothing to lose and so much to gain. So just enrolled in that and went with it.
So 8 years ago, when you come down to Sussex to start your course, did you instantly kind of think, this is it, this is for me, this is where my passion is, I recognise it now?
There was no doubt when I got into it and I met the people and started learning how you grow grapes and how you make wine, it gives it context. But then coming to Gusbourne for my first harvest in 2018 and actually seeing it unfold in front of me, and I was part of, one of the UK's most incredible harvests that we all still talk about, then I was like, yes, this is, I've found what I'm supposed to do, and I love it. I love my job completely.
So on the show, I have the pleasure of going around lots of kind of factories, as you know, and kind of often I'm chatting to people, and maybe they're making a bicycle, or maybe they're making a beautiful bag, and there's a sense of they kind of know what they're doing. They kind of know the end product very much from the start. They know where they're going, whereas this involves so much nature that I assume there's quite a bit of chance as well.
Yeah, there is, and you don't know what the season. You think you know what the season's doing, but until you've got the juice in front of you, you don't always. So you are making lots of decisions based on what's unfolding in front of you. But that's the craft of it, I suppose. That's what making vintage only wine in the UK. It's I mean, it's definitely a challenging thing to do, but it's just so rewarding when you come back to these wines a few years after the vintage and you remember the challenges or the really great things that happened in that year, and it's all pieced itself together and you have this wine in front of you. It's so worth it. So my favourite time of year in the vineyards are when everything's pruned, all the canes are tied down, it's beautifully neat and tidy and organised, and then you'll be walking around on a sunny day and you'll see the first bit of green. And that for me is like, you know, you get this real optimism and excitement for what's about to unfold in the season. Harvest is very much deep breath and let's go. But then blending is calm and it's thoughtful. So I guess those three, and actually bottling when the wine is safe and off to rest is a relief kind of feeling, because you know that you've done your job and you're ready to go again.
Basically the whole year round. Basically you're telling me you love it all. So you've poured a little glass, which I'm very excited to taste, and you're going to tell me about the taste. But one final question before we start tasting it. Sorry, it's delayed gratification. You mentioned how you know, kind of in your family that the wine was a big thing at the family table. Do you go up and chat wines with your dad?
Yeah, and actually I think he's really I think he loves that I got into wine a bit more seriously. We talked about it and he used to test me slightly. He'd have two, he'd say, and he, you know, at the time he was drinking quite a lot of Bordeaux, and he would, is this the Merlot dominant, is this the Cabernet dominant, and we would talk about them, you know, and it was just it's a very fond part of growing up. Yeah, he's got a lot, he's a big part of the reason I'm in wine. He was a farmer as well, so he's retired now, but, you know, growing things, you know, respect for nature, respect for the seasons, not getting cross about the things you can't control, like the weather. So we talk about all these things all the time when we taste wine together.
Let's taste some wine.
So we have Blanc de Blanc, which is Chardonnay, 100% Chardonnay, fruit from both our Sussex sites, which are a little bit chalkier and flintier, than our Kent sites, which are heavier clay, a bit sandy.
And how does that translate into taste?
So the grapes that are grown in Sussex on the chalk can have a lot of finesse, a lot of elegance, really lovely acid profile, lots of structure. There's a brightness and a little core of energy in those parcels. But if you combine that with some of the riper fruit, some of the ripe citrus, stone fruit, character that you get from the clay, you bring those together and you've got intensity, but you've also got elegance. So take a sniff and then give it a little swirl and take another sniff, and you'll release a load more aromas. So this wine has got quite a citrus focus, but there's some nice kind of white peach in there too that I get today, some orchard, pear.
Yeah, I mean, my sense of smell, I've got to admit, is really, really poor. But even I can definitely get, you know, the white peach and that aspect, the fruitiness.
And a saline, like salty minerality as well.
Okay, tell me what you've just done there.
I've taken a sip and spat it out. No, it's when you sip it, I don't always necessarily like to spit it. I like to drink the glass. But we spend a lot of our time checking in on these wines and making sure they're in good shape. And I think this really, really is. It's got lovely structure, really nice length. You can taste those fruits, but you also have this core, you have this thread of something super elegant from start to finish. So
okay, I'm going to give it a go. Let me just get my little, very attractive spitball. So for me, it's so clean.
Really clean.
There's a sharpness to it, but in a really, not a harshness. There's a sharpness, but not a harshness to it.
I find if we're doing a flight of Blanc de Blanc to check in on them, it's like having lots of little aperitifs, and I start to get really hungry. Loads of barrels and
Ooh, into a room full of barrels.
So these are 500 litre puncheons.
Did you say pensions?
Puncheons.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I apologise to everyone listening for my faux pas there.
And we have oak from the most recent year, so 2024, brand new oak. We have some from 23, 22, and going back 6 or 7 years. So different levels of toast, different levels of impact.
Something nice about touching a barrel, isn't there?
Yeah, it's nice that you can come and give them a cuddle sometimes. Yeah. Visit other wineries, and they have sometimes they have the ceramic eggs or the wooden egg-shaped barrels. There's something that just draws you to them, and you just want to go and hug them.
Is it the size or is it the content?
Yeah, maybe it's the wine. I'm just drawn to it.
Your friends must be really worried when you pop round, though. Like, oh yeah, come on, we'll get takeaway, and I'll get some wines. And they must be like, oh, God, Mary's coming round. What wine can we get? Quick, run down to the supermarket and get the most expensive.
I know, it's trying to convince people that actually sometimes I don't mind. You know, I go on holiday and sit by the pool and drink an ice cold glass of rosé. You know, I hate to think that it stresses people out to drink with me. And that's, you know, you always get handed the wine list, and sometimes it'd be nice if someone else chose the bottle. Yeah, it's funny. And it is I think it is, certainly in, you know, lots of my friends, it's an unusual thing that I do. It's not an everyday job, but to me it is my everyday. You know, it's an interesting one.
Mary, thank you so much for chatting to me.
No, you're welcome. It was a fun morning.
Number 26 on our list of the greatest products we make here, the sparkling wine by Gusbourne, goes into our shed of greatness. My thanks to Mary and Jon for their company, and thanks to you, as always, for hanging out with me this past half an hour. Huge, enormous thanks to those of you who have very kindly bought me a coffee to keep this show on the road. I'm grateful, and I don't take your support for granted. If you can spare a few pounds to become a supporter of the Factory Next Door, the link's in the episode description. Okay, what connects Paddington Bear with America's biggest sporting event, the Super Bowl? We'll learn about that in our next show. I hope you'll join me. For now, however your Christmas dinner pans out, whoever you're sharing it with, I hope there's laughter and goodwill. Until next time, bye.